So today we're taking a left turn into an absurd alternate reality dreamed up by the world's most beloved accordion-wielding superstar. Not always so loved, though. This comedic genius spent his early career dodging bottles, insults, and the disdain of small-minded music executives as he tried to make it in music. But he conquered pop culture through radio and through MTV and the internet in the decades that have followed. So it's time to get a little weird, my friends. It's coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies. Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. If you want to be a part of a music community that curates the best of the rock and roll era through interview stories and history, the stories from the artists themselves, go ahead and subscribe below right now. Make sure to hit the bell so that you always get your daily dose of classic rock and roll nostalgia. Also, you might consider joining us on Patreon for an expanded catalog of content. There you're going to find even more interviews straight from the artists, and that support helps us so much, so vital to our mission of keeping the music alive. I think everyone from my generation remembers the first time that they heard the great Weird Al Yankovic. As an 80s kid, there were a few touchstones that we nerds revered. Star Wars, Mad Magazine, video games, and Weird Al. So let's go back to the beginning. In 1966, at the age of 6, Alfred Yankovic came face-to-face with destiny when his mother purchased an accordion from a door-to-door accordion salesman. What are the odds? It actually only took young Al 3 years of practice before he was playing top 40 hits and writing parodies about them. At just 13, Al discovered the Dr. Demento radio show, a wacky radio program that featured an eclectic collection of offbeat songs.
Henry, in a bucket, dear Henry, in a bucket.
Like any little kid would be, Al was mesmerized. At age 16, Al recorded a song about driving around town in his parents' car called Belvedere Cruisin'.
In a Belvedere, I can really get my thrills.
He melded into Dr. Demento, and it became one of the show's most requested songs.
Go a Belvedere cruising tonight.
Al's mind was blown. He remembers, when I started out, Dr. Demento would play my stuff on the radio even though it was horribly recorded. I recorded on a little cassette tape recorder in my bedroom, just me singing along with my accordion. But he thought it was kind of a novel concept that some teenage kid was playing the accordion thinking it was cool. After this initial success, Al started submitting music to Dr. Demento on a pretty regular basis. Al was a smart kid. He graduated from high school as a 16-year-old valedictorian. His parents, not thinking music was a promising profession like most, encouraged Al to pursue architecture. So Al enrolled in Cal Poly's prestigious architecture program. Growing up, Al had been pretty shy, and it took him a while to open up in college because he was so quiet. His dorm buddies couldn't figure out if Al was a lovable nut job or a brooding serial killer. It was this perplexity that earned him the nickname Weird Al from his college classmates. In October 1977, the newly named Weird Al and his friend Joel Miller, they started playing music at local coffee houses. There was, of course, a ridiculous lineup of songs. Sometimes Al would play his accordion and sing the entire periodic table of the elements.
Titanium, tellurium, and cadmium, and calcium, and chromium, and curium.
First audiences were confused. But after the stunned silence, they couldn't stop laughing. Al said, "We'd throw some funny songs into the set, or we'd do medleys of a bunch of completely unrelated songs, and the audience went nuts. And I got this huge reaction from all these people."
Discovered.
Getting standing ovations from live audiences, that helped Al to overcome his shyness, and he realized that this was his life's calling. So in the fall of '77, Al landed a job DJing Cal Poly's campus radio station, KCPR. So from 9 p.m. to midnight, every Saturday night, it was pure Weird Al mayhem. The show was a satisfyingly odd blend of rock music, comedic characters, and off-the-wall skits. Al got more requests and phone calls than any other show there. Now, during this time, Al recorded My Bologna. A parody, of course, the Knack's My Sharona. Since he needed good acoustics and the tiled walls of the men's room gave a nice reverb effect, Al dragged yards of cable down to the hall to create a makeshift recording studio there. It did the job. Afterwards, he actually sent a copy to Doug Feiger of the Knack, who loved it so much that he encouraged Capitol Records to sign Al. So Al got a 6-month contract. Unfortunately, since My Bologna only sold about 10,000 copies, Al was dropped from the label. As we get into this further, I want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear. If you go to zenni.com today, you can check out their latest styles, and you can add amazing features like blue blocks that will protect your eyes from digital blue light from all the screens we look at. So later, when KCPR hired a new general manager, Al's DJing days were numbered. Management wanted Al just to play top 40 hits, so that's what he did. He played them backwards, at the wrong speed, and with chicken sound effects.
Looks like it's gonna be another record-breaking show. You got Weird Al on your radio. It's instant request.
The top brass, they weren't amused. Al also aired a skit in which CPR management took over the show and tied Al up in the back room. The pretended host announced we would be playing regular formatted mellow and familiar music, but in the background you could actually hear Al struggling to escape to save listeners from dying of boredom. The stunt drew more sanctions, and feeling like he had no other option, Al reluctantly quit. It was at this time that he was searching for solace, and he began to regularly visit the Dr. Demento show. While he was there one day, he wrote Another One Rides the Bus.
Hey, he's gonna sit by you, another one rides the bus.
Future bandmate John Schwartz teamed up with Al by drumming on his accordion case.
Another one rides the bus. Another one rides the bus.
And Dr. D would premiere that song, and the studio was just flooded with calls from people wanting to interview Weird Al. And when Al graduated from Cal Poly, he moved to LA to try to break into the music business. And he actually landed an appearance on Tom Snyder's Tomorrow Show, which was a big show back then. He and John flew out to New York to perform Another One Rides the Bus.
Here is Weird Al Yankovic. Here he is, Weird Al.
Now, the weirdness factor was on par with Al's usual standard. Al had another memorable performance in 1982 when he opened for new wave rockers Missing Persons. Unfortunately, it was memorable for all the wrong reasons. When Al started playing the accordion, the audience grew very angry. Boos drowned out the music, and people launched bottles and coins at the stage. Plastic cup even hit Weird Al between the eyes, actually knocking his glasses askew. After that, it was on. Al played the full set, staying up there just to irritate the audience. But despite the setbacks and false starts, Al was slowly gaining some traction. His next parody, I Love Rocky Road,
I love Rocky Road, so have another triple scope with me.
of course taking aim at Joan Jett's I Love Rock and Roll. Al hit up the songwriter Jake Hooker for permission to parody it. And though hesitant at first, Jake loved it when he read the lyrics. This was fortunate for Al because Jake also happened to manage Rick Derringer. Jake thought Rick might want to work with Al on another single, but instead, Rick insisted that he record an album. This album was a mix of new material and all that Al had written up to this point, along with My Bologna, Another One Rides the Bus, I Love Rocky Road. He also included parodies like Stop Dragging My Car Around and Ricky.
How I love to hear you whine. Hey, Lucy.
In addition, there were several original tracks, including Mr. Frump and the Iron Lung. I love that song.
And when I see Mr. Frump in his iron lung.
Once finished, they shopped it to every label in town. Problem being, almost no one got it. Most executives thought it was embarrassing. However, Tad Dowd, president of Rock and Roll Records, took a chance on Weird Al. He signed him. He thought the music was hilarious. Unfortunately, Al's new single, Ricky, it wasn't a hit. But Al and his team knew that this was going to be an uphill battle. It was something new. Fortunately, the album did well enough to convince Rock and Roll Records to give Al another shot. In 3D, that was the album that changed everything for Weird Al. It was a legitimate hit, taking Al from a starving artist to a household name who could be hungry on his own terms. With a bigger budget and more studio time, Al amped up the musical madness. The parodies continued to flow. There was the Police's King of Pain that became King of Suede.
I'm known in this city as the King of Suede.
Survivor's Eye of the Tiger turned into a Rocky spoof called The Rye or the Kaiser.
With the Rye or the Kaiser.
And of course, the Greg Keen's band Jeopardy became I Lost on Jeopardy, all classics.
Not that strong, yeah, I lost in Jeopardy. Now what I didn't win, yeah, I lost on Jeopardy.
Original compositions included Midnight Star, Nature Trail to Hell, and That Boy Could Dance. But of course, it was Eat It, a parody of Michael Jackson's Beat It that was the biggest hit of all. It was the moment that Al had been waiting for, when really a pop culture phenomenon was captured by a pop culture satirist.
Beat it, but you wanna be bad, just beat it. Eat it, get yourself an egg and beat it.
It's hard to explain to today's generation just how dominant Michael Jackson Thriller was. I mean, you had to be there to really get it. I've told my kids, to really understand it, take Adele and multiply it by 3 and you might come close. It was an unprecedented phenomenon that you had to experience to truly appreciate. I mean, it was years before the deluge slowed down. Thriller won a record-breaking 8 Grammys, including Album of the Year. It also won 8 American Music Awards, 3 MTV Music Video Awards. Went on to become the biggest selling album of all time worldwide, and it's by a long way. Beat It was a critical part of Thriller's massive success. It's kind of the rock track on the album that crossed over to every genre, with an Eddie Van Halen solo and members of Toto backing it. The song went to #1 in the US, Canada, New Zealand, and the Netherlands, and Belgium. It went to #2 in Australia, France, Germany, Ireland, and Switzerland, and broke the top 10 in the UK, Austria. Look, it was top 10 everywhere. It's also been certified 4 times platinum in the US, and of course, it was the perfect target for the Weird Al treatment.
It's boiled or fried, just eat it. Just eat it.
Just one little thing, all Al had to do was get the biggest star on the planet, biggest star by far, is convinced the King of Pop to let him write it. Though not legally required to do so, Weird Al routinely asked for permission before spoofing songs. With MJ, Al didn't think that he had a shot in the dark. Weird Al said, "We're talking about the most popular and famous person in the known universe, and here I was, this goofy comedy songwriter. I didn't think we'd even be able to get his blessing for Eat It." But Weird Al's manager reached out to Jackson's reps, and Al got the thumbs up. Michael Jackson even thought it was a pretty funny idea. It was the miracle that Al had been waiting for. The lyrics of Beat It are about, growing up on the streets and fighting to prove that you're a man. I mean, the song with that fierce guitar solo and hook, it's replete with themes of conflict and violence. It was no joke when Jackson wrote it to Eddie Van Halen and Steve Lukather when they played on it. So of course, Weird Al turned it on its head by addressing one of pop music's more unconventional themes, eating all your dinner.
Now if you starve to death, you'll just have yourself to blame, so eat it.
Much of the delight of listening to Weird Al comes from our familiarity with the song that he's spoofing. But if you had never heard Beat It, Eat It would still be funny. But he knew that just about everybody had heard it, so he intentionally compares and contrasts the 2 songs, launching the humor to new heights. For example, Weird Al wants you to believe you are actually listening to Beat It when it starts. Both openings are very similar, and the differences are subtle. Jackson's intro is about 10 seconds longer. But Al's hoping that he's done enough to fool you. And if you're not paying close enough attention, then Al has got you when he starts singing, "How come you're always such a fussy young man?"
How come you're always such a fussy young man?
The gag deepens even more when you hear Al singing his lyrics with the same intensity as MJ. There's a definite seriousness and urgency when Michael Jackson sings, "You better run, you better do what you can, don't want to see no blood, don't be a macho man."
Do what you can. Don't wanna see no blood. Don't be a macho man.
You want to be tough, better do what you can, so beat it, but you want to be bad. But here's the thing, none of that intensity is lost in Al's edition. In fact, he sounds genuinely irritated. Don't want to argue, I don't want to debate, don't want to hear about what kind of food you hate.
I don't wanna debate. Don't wanna hear about what kind of food you hate.
You won't get no dessert till you clean off your plate, so eat it. Don't tell me you're full.
You clean off your plate, so eat it. Don't you tell me you're full.
Of course, part of the fun is that when Al sings, he pretends to be completely unaware of the parody. He is all in, and it's undeniably real. That's what works so well. You're playing with your food, this ain't some kind of game, and that, of course, makes us laugh even more. I mean, as a kid, the first time that you heard this, it was like milk coming out of your nose hilarious.
Manners are a crying shame. You're playing with your food, this ain't some kind of game.
Now, in Eat It's music video, Yankovic dons Jackson's red leather jacket and his black pants and proceeds to imitate Beat It shot by shot. It was a formula that clearly worked, and one that Al would return to in the future with Fat, Smells Like Nirvana, Amish Paradise, and White and Nerdy. Al's meticulous attention for detail not only led him to rebuild Beat It, but he even hired Jackson's dancers, and the set was exactly right. Unsurprisingly, Al had Beat It continually playing on a monitor while they filmed so that he could get its precise likeness. Al really did become MJ's doppelganger, even making the camera move in on him the way that it did on Michael.
Eat it, eat it, eat it, eat it, eat it.
Then, of course, there's Al's dancing, and you have to applaud his tenacity. Michael Jackson, of course, a dance prodigy, continually reinventing signature moves throughout his career. As Jackson's comedic protege, Al isn't half bad. He overly accentuates Jackson's signature moves, but it's intentional, and we have to laugh.
Eat it, get yourself an egg and beat it.
Al has pointed out that he has no training as a dancer, but he's emphasized it as part of the humor. He's just this goofy white guy who can't dance like most of us, and yet he's so committed to it. As funny as the gags are, and they're funny, pantsless hooligans, a smiley face jacket,
Don't want no Captain Crunch, don't want no Raisin Bran.
an exploding guitarist, a knife fight with switchblade utensils, and of course a rubber chicken. In the end, it's Al's unwavering commitment to the joke that really wins us over. We know that he knows that this is all a prank, and we can almost see him winking at us through the fourth wall. But he never betrays the ruse. He stays in character, and we're completely sold.
Whole bunch, it doesn't matter what you had for lunch, just eat it.
This was one of my favorite videos as a kid. I mean, I sat on pins and needles until it came on Friday Night Videos or MTV over at my friend's house. Weird Al's earlier videos didn't change his life or his bank account much, but Eat It did.
Reheat it, have a big dinner, have a light snack.
Weird Al would say, the day that video went into heavy rotation on MTV, my anonymity disappeared. Literally overnight, I became a celebrity. The Eat It guy. As a person who is fairly anonymous his whole life, I'd suddenly be walking down the street and having people stare at me. After that, my albums went platinum. My concert tours sold out. You have to wonder if Michael Jackson hadn't given Weird Al the green light. what would have happened? Would he have had a career? Truthfully though, Weird Al doing one of your songs, it's a sign that you've really made it, as many artists have told me in interviews. Now, I hope to interview Weird Al one day. That'd be awesome. And I would like to add in all the comments from all of those artists who have told their stories of their songs and their love of his parodies of those songs. Now, Eat It was released as a single on February 28, 1984. It went to number 12 on the US Billboard Hot 100. It went to number 4 on the US Cashbox Top 100. Also reached number 36 in the UK, number 6 in New Zealand, number 5 in Canada, went to number 1 in Australia.
Have yourself to blame, so eat it. Just eat it.
Weird Al Yankovic has since become truly one of the touchstones of every childhood, or adulthood, really. It's like a rite of passage, though. I've seen it with every one of my kids. One of them found it on his own, just going around YouTube. I mean, he's walking around the house singing Fat, and he's like 6 years old, 7 years old. Weird Al has truly transcended parodying just music. He's become a cultural personality for the ages. But that's a story for another day, and we'll definitely do it.
Eat it. Don't you make me repeat it.
Leave us a comment about Weird Al and your memories of Eat It. What's the funniest gag in the music video to you? Tell us all about it. What are your favorite parodies? If you like this content, we do invite you to subscribe. Make sure to hit the bell so you don't miss out on our videos. We also love to have you as part of our community. Check us out on Patreon and make sure to check out our 1984 Vintage Years collection. If you're a fan of the 80s, you're going to love it. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.